Welcome. Hey, man. Hey, good luck. How's it going, guys? All right, so my name is Frank Sondors, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Salesforge. Some of you may have seen us last 2 years on the stage talking about some other things. I have some presentation. Is there a clicker? Sorry, my bad. Yeah, much better. So we're going to talk about scaling. So here at Salesforge, we've been in the business for less than 3 years. And so we scale like typically what we say, like top 1% companies. So we're going to talk about it a bit more and educate you and hopefully inspire you to do better and more. So my background is in sales, over 10 years in sales, B2B SaaS, so working for different companies, scaled a lot of sales teams up to 50 people in multiple different places. Right now, running at Salesforge 7 products, so selling 7 products to companies in the US. First year scaled to 3 million, and we're scaling profitably, even though we did raise $500,000. And I'm currently managing a 40-plus strong team. Half of that team is go-to-market, and there's only 6 salespeople actually on board, and we're doing about 500 demos on a monthly basis. Powering about 10K businesses, predominantly in the US, 70% of those, and that's just going to give you sort of a bit of a context on the business. And we got to go into a bunch of different examples just to help you kind of inspire. So now we built a machine over the last 2 years, and I highly recommend that you take a screenshot of this thing that you're seeing in front of you, because it will disappear very soon. So today, you want to be scaling not just through humans and remote bodies. You want to be scaling through systems and agents. That's first and foremost. So we have one agent that we sell called Agent Frank. It does outbound, does cold email, does LinkedIn, programmatically at scale. But also, you want to be making sure you also have humans in play, because humans do have a huge part in sales, whether they're doing social selling, cold calling, or also trading trade shows, events, right? Because an AI agent is still not working among us unless we're going to partner up with Elon Musk. So the other thing that you have to think about is there's a lot of repetitive things that you do in your business. A lot of things, manual stuff in the CRM, in Slack, etc. So you want to build out a lot of automation workflows. And we have over 300 automation workflows that kills repetitive work in the business. So it's super important. Whatever you have repetitive that's in your business, you want to kill it as soon as you can. So we have a Slack channel called N8 Ideas, and any employee can suggest an idea on what should be killed when it comes to repetitive work, and works really, really well. You can see how many employees we have doing different things. I'm not going to go through that. But the other thing that's very important when you are thinking about scaling, so if you're not good at something, whatever that is, YouTube, etc., you should be also working with gazillions of agencies. I bet that ClickUp works with a ton of agencies. We work with 6 right now, and we're happy to work with more if that's not something that we're going to specialize in. There was one startup that I spoke to yesterday. They really suck at one particular thing, and I told them to outsource that immediately because there's an opportunity cost. The fact that you're not doing that, you're losing actually revenue. So, and you can see our volume that we just generally do on outbound. So a lot of people send, 10 emails a day, maybe 100 emails a day, etc. But there's a saying, and that saying is, scale trumps luck, and I highly recommend that you remember this. Scale trumps luck, so the more you're thinking about scale, just like ClickUp thinks about scale, we think about scale, a lot of other companies think about scale. Whatever the number is that you have in your mind is typically 10x. So whatever your number, whatever the math says, if you just do a 10x of that, you will be lucky. So now we talked about AI agents. So it's very important that I show you a bunch of different examples. So we use today various AI agents, but one of them, for example, runs on inbound. So it is fully legal for you to be running voice agentic systems. For example, calling up your leads that did not actually convert from a trial, or calling up churn accounts that will churn ultimately, right? But if you keep calling them once a quarter, then you are able to potentially bring them back. And a lot of businesses do bring them back. So we do bring back a lot of our churn customers because something happened, whether they didn't need the software for a while, etc. But you should be always knocking on the doors, including your churn accounts. So, and then the other thing that, if you have a lot of folks that ghost you when it comes to attending demos. Imagine you book a bunch of demos like we do book 500 demos, but even if 50 people don't attend demos, that's 50 people that we have to chase. But one of the ways you can chase is through an agentic system. So you literally can call them up, and it'll say something like, hey, this is Frank calling from Salesforge. I saw that we had a meeting scheduled for this day, but you didn't manage to turn up. Would you want to reschedule? Right? It's a very simple thing, and something that you want to do programmatically. Why would you want to use humans for something like that? So The other thing which is very, very important for you to scale is figuring out who your ICP is. And a lot of people, including yesterday, I spoke to a few startups from Ukraine, where we were just discussing about what is the go-to-market strategy. Are we selling direct? Are we selling through partners? Or are we also selling through tech partners, agencies, whatever? There's multiple ways to go to market, and you should be always testing. We're even powering over 20 competitors today with our tech, so even your competitors could be your potential customers. So think who could buy this stuff, and just think very, very, outside the box, including my competitors could buy my stuff. The one example that I always bring up is the fact that Google pays Apple over $1 billion a year, I believe, to make sure that Chrome is the default browser in Apple, right? So just to give you an idea where two competitors work together. The other thing that is very important to note is for you to truly scale, you need to do proper attribution. Proper attribution meaning you need to ask the prospect, typically at the sign-up point or at the demo point, where do you hear about us? And that should drive more investment into the areas where things are working and less in the things that are not working, right? So if you're not getting the signal and we're spending a lot of money on a particular channel, then we potentially should be deprecating that. Not always, but potentially, and these are the signals that are very important. It should be always an open field on a sign-up or even in a demo. Demo meaning sign-up form. Where do you hear about us? And then you can structure that, and based on that, you know where to invest. So we, as a business, we drive a ton of traffic. Here's some data for a month's traffic. We have over 5 million impressions. And so we have ways to drive traffic through SEO, geo, et cetera. We have currently about 4 million pages across 6 websites, so 6 products that we currently sell. And one of the things that you should always think about is 3 things on how to convert on the site. So in Latvia, they typically say, 3 sliedas, labs sliedas. So 3 things are good things, and so you should give a customer 3 ways to convert. So 1 could be just literally starting a trial, 2 is booking a demo, and 3 is literally calling up a rep during the working hours in the US. And so today, we generate over 200 calls on our sites, where either the user calls us, which is about half of the call, and then the second half of the call, which is maybe more interesting for you, we call the user on the site, especially on the scroll depth of 50%, which generates 100 calls plus every single month for us calling the user. So these pages could be competitor pages as an example. So here's how it looks. The tool is called Captivate, but you could maybe use some other tool as well. But literally will pop bottom left or bottom right, and you can literally call during the working hours. And in Slack, which is where you're going to get the call, you literally click answer the call, and it's like a hangout essentially that you're doing. So you could also do real-time demos as well. Now, when you know the attribution and you know how to scale traffic and a bunch of different bits, it's also important for you to see where your top customers actually came from exactly. So this could be top 10, top 50 customers. Typically, that's where you want to know, where you want to invest even more money. So these are our top 10 customer sources, and you can see how varied that is, and what actually truly has to happen from a sales standpoint from doing manual things, but also automated things. But you can see, for example, one of the typical sort of awakenings for a lot of people is like, damn, there's a lot of money made to be on YouTube. And the question is, are you actually doing anything on YouTube at all? We even make reviews of our competitors on YouTube. So one example would be 11x Demo. So 11x is a competitor of ours. It's number 1 or one of the top AI agents in the world. And they never showed their demo ever live anywhere on the internet. So we thought ourselves, we're going to do that. So whenever somebody just searches for 11x Demo, then guess what happens? We pop up on Google quite frequently. So they generate signups, but we also generate signups because we direct a lot of their traffic to us. There's another thing that you have to think about, and people are struggling that, is Reddit. Whether you're making posts, comments, or a bunch of other things you can make on Reddit, even pinging people on Reddit, it's a gold mine if your customers are in the US or the UK. Now, we're going to talk about what does it actually take to scale, right? So this is the system. I gave you some examples. We're going to look at the other examples. But one of the things why founders fail and why salespeople fail is they don't put in enough hours. So that means literally working 7 days a week. That's one thing that doesn't happen in this part of the world a lot because people like to take time off. But it's a very typical thing that happens, for example, in the US and the Silicon Valley, where people work at least 6 days a week, right? So, and working actually means having fully to the brim calendars with potential customers, partners, etc. And that's what truly takes, for you to scale. This is a calendar of a top 1%, typically CEO or founder, etc., that is aggressively scaling. So if you don't have at least 10 to 20 meetings every day, you're not going to make it to being in the top 1% bucket. The other thing that is important to scale, so this is an example of what I mean by 10x. So some people do 1 podcast a year, some people do 5 podcasts a year, but how about doing 50 plus podcasts a year? So we did over 50 podcast appearances last year, talking about different topics, educating people in scale, etc. So think about podcasts a bit like SEO, right? These podcasts will be out there for quite some time, right? And why wouldn't you want to do more and more of those, right? If you're struggling to attribute podcasts or find podcasts, there's definitely a way. You can literally hire an agency that will charge you $150 per podcast booked, essentially, appearance as a guest, right? But it is one of the ways, unusual ways for you to scale, because you can find potentially a ton of folks doing podcasts in your space, and you can latch on your audience, right? You can be on the podcast. So Chris, for example, from ClickUp is in a lot of different podcasts that I have seen. So I follow Chris a fair bit from ClickUp. The other thing that you can do at scale, and so imagine we're at TechChill right now, but how about doing 20 TechChills in a quarter? So this is my Q4 calendar. This is actually not the whole one, but just calendar on having one specific event type where I did about 20 events in Q4. So you don't do 1 event a year, or 1 event a quarter, or 2 events a quarter. You do 20 and 30. And that's what it takes to scale. You need to think bigger. Where are your customers or potential customers hanging out? And you want to do this as programmatically as you can, as in, there has to be a pattern, as in, let's say you sell something in AI, right, and you sell to some AI managers or AI engineers, whatever. Where do they hang out? And I bet there are events either across Europe or in the US, right, if you're selling globally, and you want to be doing this very, what I call aggressively. Aggressively means you always fly in, because not talking to customers is not something that you do. So you should be always talking to customers, whether you are doing it through 10 to 20 meetings a day, like I'm doing, or you literally fly in, and today I'm maybe going to be able to talk to either existing customers or new customers today. So selling offline aggressively is something that you all should do. Now, doing things differently, so this is what we call a pattern interrupt. So pattern interrupt for me is a default. So the default meaning like, what is a different experience, let's say, when you sign up to a software? So when you typically sign up to a software today or some sort of service, you're going to get an email from that company. But one thing that we do is we will send you not a Slack message, sorry, a WhatsApp message we're going to send you. And guess what? A WhatsApp message sent on inbound has a 20x higher reply rate than an email, right? If you think about it, what could it mean to you if you had a 20x higher response on your inbound traffic? Why don't you change the variable, which is the channel of the onboarding communication, and that literally message just reads, hey, this is Frank from Salesforge. Did you have any questions? You could be just simple as that, and people say, yes, I do have a question. And you're assisting your user either through the onboarding questions that they have, or you're helping them to convert. And guess what? The largest customer that I have signed last quarter came from this, literally this. I closed him on WhatsApp inbound. So now we're going to look at how to do email capture. Email capture is very important. So when you drive traffic naturally onto the site, so I'll show you one example, which was, hey, let's see if they can sign up. Let's see, as a part of the trial, let's see if they want to book a demo, right, which is very normal. And then the third option is they can call us or go into chat. But there's other ways to do email capture on the site. So we look at lead magnets, essentially. Lead magnets are very, very powerful, and people don't typically do lead magnets today. Here's an example of one lead magnet. So if you go to agentfrank.ai, which will redirect you to our site, you can literally enter your email address on your LinkedIn URL, and you can get a uniquely crafted email by an AI agent, right? Because people want to get the end product from that particular company. This is not a lead magnet. We can build for you an outbound strategy plan. Again, you just enter your email address, and you will have a fully computed custom plan delivered to you in 2 minutes. It's like a proposal, essentially, or a quote, essentially, because there's also price levers, etc. Super, super powerful. This is something that you can build in a tool like Lovable or Claude very, very fast. Email me the quote. You look in the pricing page, right? And the pricing maybe is complex. Guess what? Just say, hey, do you want me to email you this? Yes. Enter the email. Bam, you get an email from the user. Email me the case study. You look in the case study. Email me this thing. Email me this file, because I need to forward it to my manager, or I need to sell this tool internally, right? So learning how to do email capture and generating essential leads MQLs, you can look at them, etc. It's something you need to learn. One thing to learn is like how to drive traffic. Two is how to actually convert that traffic to your site. Now, 5 pillars of outreach is the next section I want to go through. So all these things are, I think, important just to kind of inspire you. Now, the next section is around doing outreach. So a lot of people, there's a thing called inbound and there's a thing called outbound. And it's not that you choose one or the other. You always do both. So today, just to give you an idea, out of 500 demos that we do, 400 demos come from inbound, and 400 demos come from inbound, and 100 demos come from outbound. So, but how to do outbound is not it's not easy. Let me just send an email, for example, a LinkedIn message, etc. So there's a lot of things that go actually into that. So I broke it down into 5 pillars. So one is what we call the infrastructure. So you always scale outreach horizontally. So you never send emails from your primary business domain when you're looking to truly scale. Essentially, if you're sending like more than 50 emails per day from your business domain, you should think about horizontal scaling because you are putting your domain at risk. Copy matters a lot, meaning what goes actually into the email or LinkedIn message. Data, who is it that you're sending the email to or the LinkedIn message, because sending emails or LinkedIn messages to the wrong people has a huge negative impact on your infrastructure, so your whole business. So learning how to send emails to the right people is something that's super important. Pillar 4 is the orchestration. It's like things like pacing. Do I send like 1 email every day or 1 email per week? Do I multi-thread? Do I do multi-channel? So how do you orchestrate your actual outreach? It's a huge, huge topic. And then the final thing is what's called social selling. What is your appearance on platforms like LinkedIn, website, etc.? So I have a lot of people that come to me and say, Frank, I want to do a ton of outreach. And then you look at their LinkedIn presence and their website, and it's awful. It's so, so awful. So you need to get your house in order, essentially make sure that you are super presentable on LinkedIn. So how to do that, I have a whole webinar on this on our YouTube channel. And then the website, well, it's up to you. You can definitely, you wipe code it for sure these days, right? So if you have a really, really old school website. So still a lot of businesses have that, or they don't know actually how to make a good looking site. So pillar 1 that we're going to start. So I'm going to briefly go through, but essentially, one thing that you don't want to do is send any form of emails from your primary domain if you're ever doing any scaling. So, and you set up what's called the secondary domains. So for example, if you have a domain called Salesforge.ai, which is our primary domain, I do not send emails at any scale from Salesforge.ai. You should always scale from what's called secondary domains. So for example, Team Salesforge.ai, Get Salesforge.ai, and so on and so forth. You horizontally scale across multitude of domains and email accounts across many different domain registrars typically these days, and many what's called ESPs, so email service providers. And this is what's called a robust email infrastructure that you set that up. And that's something exactly that you also do on LinkedIn when it comes to horizontal scaling. Meaning that you do not just use your own LinkedIn profile to reach out, but in the early days when there were just 3 co-founders in the business, I used 3 profiles to actually reach out because you're capped at 100 connection requests on a weekly basis. But if I have at my disposal 3 profiles from 3 co-founders, I can reach out to 300 people per week, right, and connect with them, right? So if you think about it, that today I have 45 employees. If every employee says, yes, you can use my profile to help you build pipeline, that means 45 LinkedIn profiles at my disposal. So the way that you scale outreach today typically is horizontally. So just to give you an idea, in our business, we have 400 email accounts for us to scale horizontally email, and then we have 50 plus LinkedIn profiles for us to scale horizontally on LinkedIn, and that's what drives over 100 meetings on a monthly basis. Bad copy kills good deliverability. So you may set up the right infrastructure on LinkedIn, the right infrastructure email, but the problem is if the stuff that goes into your email actually can kill deliverability, and you can land in spam, because you have too much HTML, too many links, too many videos. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. So I'm not going to go through all of it, but if you're really curious, just take a picture of this. This is exactly the stuff. It's very difficult, actually, these days to make sure you land in the primary. It's not that easy, actually. And there's a lot that goes into that. So this is an example of what you need to do. You can't just send templates. You need to use what's called spin tags or AI-based copies, because Google is very smart. Google uses Gemini to associate spam reports with content. So you need to spin tags, randomize the content that's in the email, or use AI to actually truly have superior deliverability. Then, if you want to learn about it, just go to the YouTube channel. There's a ton of content on there. The next thing I want to mention that is the audience. So shortly about the audience, there's multiple ways to target, and you're going to kind of, these are the examples of the targeting that we use to generate the business for us. And just make sure you try and eliminate the people that should not get your emails or LinkedIn messages because you are wasting your capacity, you're burning your infrastructure, and things will just not pan out. So eliminating the non-ICPs is super important. So just ask yourself, what is the anti-ICP? One example I'm going to give is extracting competitive followers from LinkedIn. It's something that works really well for us because we have hundreds of competitors. And I bet all of you have competitors. And you can extract the followers, and that's the closest thing that you get when it comes to actually knowing who their customers are, who their potential integration partners are, and stuff like that. This is all about orchestration and what you need to do. So Salesforge is a platform that orchestrates the execution across email, LinkedIn, and there's a bunch of different tips in here that I'm putting out. But orchestration is like a huge, huge part in terms of what happens. And so essentially, there's a lot of strategy that goes into this. Either you need to train yourself, and it takes hours and hours to train yourself on this, or you can hire an agency to do this for you. But without a strategy, orchestration strategy, the whole infrastructure will fail on your end. When it comes to LinkedIn, it matters a lot because you need to warm up your audience, and warming up your audience means you need to look good on LinkedIn. You need to make sure you are posting pretty much every day on LinkedIn because by warming up the audience every single day, and then you hit them up actually on LinkedIn and email, guess what? The conversion rate goes through the roof because they have heard about you already somewhere, right? So, and that's really it. Thank you so much.